Hi everybody, here's a quick video around how to tackle these market-based environmental policy questions. This video has a main focus on answer structure and what the assessors are looking for. Okay, so what is market-based? So the study design specifies that it needs to be a market-based policy, which means your teacher will generally provide one policy for you to use, but there will be other ones available in your textbook resources or things you might find online. Essentially, to qualify for this particular key knowledge point, a market-based policy needs to have some direct effect on the demand or supply of a specific market. And a specific market in this context would be something that affects environmental sustainability. Okay, so there are some policies here like regulations which don't apply to this particular key knowledge point. They need to be something that changes the demand or supply for a particular market, ideally through the price mechanism and the market mechanism. Okay, so the one we are talking about this year is the hydrogen production tax incentive. And on the screen here is just a pretty quick summary of the things that I would expect you to write in your response. The first kind of idea is this. The hydrogen production tax incentive broadly is subsidies for research and development towards the production of renewable green hydrogen. The government wants to incentivize firms to start to figure out how to make this form of energy. And they're doing that through a number of different vehicles, but the easiest one to remember and quite a potent one is they're providing a tax rebate of $2 per kilo of green hydrogen produced. All right, so that's what the policy that we're going to be using is, and let's go now into the specific answer structure of the kind of questions you're going to get from this particular key knowledge point. So I broadly want you to think of this answer structure into three areas. The first one is the policy. The second one is the market mechanism, and this is where we want to talk kind of a micro lens. And then the third part is a flip to macro, because your effect terms in this particular key knowledge point are generally going to be aggregate supply or living standards. And so those need to relate to the broader economy and not just the one market that you're going to start your response with. So let's go through these three in detail. Okay, so describe the policy. I'll just move my head over. Whoa! So the policy here, what I'll get you to do is essentially pause this video if you like, and this is a succinct but detailed enough summary for what I would like you to write to demonstrate your understanding of the policy. Essentially what you need here is the title of the policy with some details. So feel free to pause the video to take this down in your notes. Cool. Then the second step is you're going to describe how resources are reallocated within that specific market. So we're starting with a micro focus. You need to show how this policy affects the market. The question will say a market-based environmental policy. And so after you've described the policy, you need to go in and show how that market mechanism works. And an example of what that might look like is on the screen here. This creates a higher relative cost of production for the production of carbon-based energy, causing energy-producing firms to allocate resources away from carbon-based energy and toward the relatively lower cost green hydrogen market. So here there's got to be something about this specific market and how the policy has incentivized firms to move resources from one to another. And then we flip to macro. So we've described the policy, we've then talked about the micro impact, and then now your next section, depending on where the question has asked you to go, whether it's short-term, long-term, AS, living standards, whatever it might be, this is where you need to show the assessor that you understand the impact of this at the macro level, the whole economy. And what's on the screen here might be an example of what you can write here. Due to this new industry being an infant industry, the initial levels of output per unit of resource would be lower than previous carbon energy production techniques. You essentially need to show here in the short term, if producers reduce their output of carbon-based energy, well, the increase in output they're going to get from, in the short term, of this new form of production isn't going to undo all that negative pressure or downward pressure on total aggregate supply. Okay, the total level of production in the short term will be less, and then that's where you make the link to a lowering of AS in the short term. And then you make the link to the longer term. It says, however, over time, more efficient production processes emerge through this new form of energy. And then this is the real tricky part of this question, because what you need to show in the long term is, if we've lost in the short term, if we've lost this much output, well, then this new energy can't just make that same amount of output back. This last idea really needs to demonstrate that there is a net gain. So if this is our starting point, and we've lost this much output in the short term because it's an infant industry and firms are figuring out like how to do it, what you need to demonstrate is over the long term, the energy production provided from this new renewable energy is going to be higher than would have been the case if we just stuck with the carbon energy systems. And a way you could phrase that is, as this new technology uses an infinitely renewable resource, water, meaning as fossil fuels deplete, water does not, and that shows that there's an overall net increase in possible production levels, because over time, we're going to reduce the amount of coal that is available to be used, and then so that will limit our ability to supply. Whereas if we switch to this form of energy production, well, that has infinite levels of possible production output required here, meaning over time, our total possible output in the energy sector and therefore the whole economy will improve. Okay, so just a quick recap, these questions really need to be in 3 sections. The first one, describe the policy, title, plus additional detail. The second one is you're going to have a micro approach, how this policy will incentivize an allocation of resources towards or away a particular market. And then your third step here is you want to flip to macro and use the macro language to really demonstrate to your assessor that you understand that aggregate supply only changes when the total ability or willingness to supply of the whole economy changes. Hopefully this was helpful. Any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, happy learning.